Hello, let us see what's up with Lightning Conduit Trickster. Lightning Conduit is a brand new spell. It only damages shocked enemies, which removes the shock from them, but it cannot inflict this ailment by itself. It requires a second spell to shock its targets, preferably one that can do it very efficiently so as not to slow you down. Orb of Storms is the best pick. Orb of Storms casts a chaining arc-like beam every 3 or so seconds or each time you cast another lighting spell yourself when in its range. It results in a synergistic sequence of deploying the orb and killing everything in your range. Mind that shock will spread quite quickly with lightning mastery. The build relies heavily on charges, especially power charges. It's tanky enough to gain these charges by being stationary via Ralakesh's Impatience and withstanding all the attacks. It's able to do so by leeching energy shield with the new Trickster's Soul Drinker Keystone and other tricks. You're capable of reaching around 2 mil DPS, which is not very high. It's around the same value as Righteous Fire, Fire Trap Inquisitor, and the durability is also quite similar. It's completely dependent on energy shield leech, so you might find yourself in a pickle when there's absolutely nothing to leech off of. Lightning Conduit deals more damage per effective shock on its target. The effect of shock can be enhanced by another new gem, Overcharge Support. It allows low damage skills, Orb of Storms in this case, to shock enemies with much greater efficiency, which is exactly what the build needs. The durability is sourced here only from the high energy shield pool that is gained back by leeching and recovering, via Ghost Dance. Recharging or regenerating is almost non-existent. Frost Shield and Arctic Armor boost your durability by a lot. It's one of the tankiest builds for a Trickster. Clear speed is not as bad as one can assume from the description alone. Single target damage is quite good, not very high, but a 7-digit one for sure. Some of the unique items are expensive, but overall the build is very cheap. The build uses many unique items that synergize well with power charges such as Void Battery, the Ephemeral Bond, and Malachai's Loop. Some of these items are not commonly used because the drawback of quickly losing these charges is too debilitating, but since this build is tanky enough to stand still for long periods of time while having charges permanently on due to Ralakesh's Impatience, these are great choices. The Vertex makes it really easy to cast the Wrath supported by Divine Blessing. There's no substitute to this helmet if you want to use this aura, and you definitely should. It has decent stats. With over 9 power charges, the Void Battery becomes an unmatched source of damage in these types of critical spell-based builds. It's moderately expensive, depending on the stats. Malachai's Loop grants 2 extra maximum power charges, increased damage per charge, and energy shield. The two of its big downsides are not affecting this build at all. Ralakesh's Impatience. The core element of the build are these boots. As soon as you become stationary you gain 15 charges. You will fight enemies while standing still in your Frost Shield for massive defensive and offensive bonuses. These boots are expensive. Thunderfist Gloves increase the effect of shock by 100%, grant evasion, energy shield, and a lot of damage for the Orb of Storms, which should be socketed here. This item might cost a bit, but not too much. The Ephemeral Bond Amulet is one we recommend. It gives you elemental resistances, critical strike multiplier, mana regeneration rate, and adds a lot of lightning damage per power charge. The only downside of reduced charges duration is non-existent. If you have a way to become elusive and you want the 6 extra maximum frenzy charges, use Badge of the Brotherhood. It grants no elemental resistances and is a bit expensive. Comparable to Ephemeral Bond. You can socket Shavron's Revelation in your left ring slot for a huge bonus to energy shield and mana regeneration rate, but be careful, you won't be able to recharge ES. It's very good, as long as you're fighting an opponent that has no long invulnerability phases while also dealing a lot of damage, like Exarch's Rolling Meteor Wall. Transmogrify your Doomsday Keystone into Inner Conviction via Dominus Militant Faith. You will still be able to gain frenzy charges, so it just grants you over 27% more spell damage with no downside. Be sure that none of the notables in its range are transformed. Place energy from within jewel near infused notable. It grants some extra energy shield for survivability. If you're using Badge of the Brotherhood, Mistwalker is a great keystone you can get from forbidden jewels. Otherwise deadly or unstable infusion is what to look for, depending on your critical strike chance. Wrath, Discipline, and Purity of Elements are your auras. For a Watcher's Eye mod we recommend Wrath's Lightning Penetration. You might also want to include Clarity at level 1 for its modifier that reduces the mana cost of skills. There's not much to look for on your rare items as the general defensive modifiers are usually enough. Remember that with Chaos Inoculation you don't need any maximum life or chaos resistance. It should be easy to cap the elemental resistances with just mediocre gear, so gathering Energy Shield would be your top priority. On your body armor try to gather as much evasion rating as you can. It will affect your maximum Energy Shield via Escape Artist. We recommend a mixed evasion ES base because you'll need 5 or 6 blue sockets. Resistances, Strength, and Energy Shield are to be looked for on a belt. Stygian Vice or Crystal Belt are good candidates for a base. On the ring focus mostly on resistances and missing attributes. For an upgrade try to get a ring with an extra maximum power charge or added damage per power charge. These might be very expensive. The mirrored ones might be of use. There are a lot of stats that don't affect you. For the unique flasks, we recommend Rotgut and Bottled Faith. Use Rotgut for an increased movement speed, it grants onslaught and has increased duration per frenzy charge consumed, which it won't do, but the effect will apply anyway. Bottled Faith is an expensive flask, but it's worth its price. It improves your damage, critical strike chance, and multiplier. It can be easily replaced with a magic sulfur flask. For the other flasks, pick a quartz one for phasing and spell suppression chance, a diamond flask for an increased critical strike chance, and jade flask for extra evasion rating. These should grant you immunity to corrupted blood and bleeding on use, extra cast speed, movement speed, critical strike chance, and evasion rating on use. Lightning Conduit deals lightning damage to the enemies in the targeted location. It will deal lightning damage with a high critical strike chance. Link it with Energy Leech, Lightning Penetration, Elemental Focus, Power Charge on critical, and Inspiration support. Inspiration can be replaced with increased critical damage support if you have lowered the mana cost enough. Orb of Storm is used to cause shock. It fires up a chaining beam each time you cast a spell while standing inside of it. It also deals some damage on its own. This setup should be socketed in Thunderfist gloves for extra added lightning damage. Link it with Overcharge and Enervate. You can use Chain or Increased Area of Effect for better coverage, or Lightning Penetration for extra damage. Arcanist Brand will cast all Link spells every second while attached to an enemy. Use it to apply lightning exposure via Wave of Conviction and to gain an Arcane Surge buff via Arcane Surge support, but keep it at a level low enough to trigger it with a single cast. Assassin's Mark greatly increases your critical strike chance and critical strike damage. It should be your curse of choice, also linked to the Arcanist brand. Immortal Call is a guard spell that reduces elemental and physical damage taken. It lasts longer the more endurance charges you spent on it, which is 3. Keep it at level 3, and link it with a level 1 cast when damage taken support. Use Wrath Aura for over 20% more lightning spell damage. With Divine Blessing support, it becomes a temporary aura. You don't have enough reservation efficiency to have it up permanently, and your damage should be enough to kill most of the enemies without it anyway. Link it with Inspiration support and socket in the Vertex helmet. Your other auras and mana reserving skills are Discipline. It is used only for its additional Energy Shield bonus. Purity of Elements grants extra elemental resistances and complete immunity to all elemental ailments like chill or ignite. With Arctic Armor, you take over 20% less physical and elemental damage while stationary. It chills your foes on hit. Lightning Warp keeps you stationary after use so that you don't lose your charges. It can be of course replaced with other movement abilities if you don't like this one. Frost Shield drains your Energy Shield while you're inside of it. It then mitigates incoming damage and grants you an additional critical strike chance. It's very powerful, especially against ranged enemies. You should kill all the bandits. You might consider Alira, as all her bonuses are useful, but you should be able to gain similar stats from your gear rather effortlessly. 2 more points are much more appealing. Soul of the Brine King is what we recommend for a major god. It makes you stun immune, which can often save you from death. Soul of Ralakesh is a great pick for a minor god. It makes you take less bleed damage. Yugal is good if you struggle with curses, and Tukahama is the best option for when you already have a flask to stop bleeding. The passive skill tree is constructed as to allocate as many different masteries for Polymath, and to gain the 2 extra maximum power charges. Allocate Chaos Inoculation, Ghost Reaver, and Ghost Dance for your keystones. Get the nearby lightning damage, critical strike, energy shield, and spell suppression nodes. For masteries, pick lightning ones for an increased maximum shock effect and shock spread. For a slightly better clear speed, allocate the extra chain for the Orb of Storms. For Reservation Mastery, pick the increased aura effect. For Evasion Mastery, increased evasion from your body armor. For the Leech Mastery, go for an extra maximum total recovery for energy shield. Critical strike chance sourced from spell suppression chance from spell suppression mastery. Stun threshold based on energy shield from energy shield mastery, or discipline reservation efficiency if you can't be stunned. For elemental mastery, pick the increased effect of non-damaging ailments. For caster mastery, get increased damage per intelligence. For critical mastery, extra multiplier against rares and uniques. Allocate extra strength for attributes mastery, reduced mana cost of skills for mana mastery, and increased damage per charge from charge mastery. That is all for this video. We encourage you to like it if you learned something, or subscribe to see more build guides. See you soon.